Hi, everyone. I'm so pleased today to be joined by my guest today, Gloria Swardensky. She has an immense experience in the area of learning and education. She's a life coach, a professional speaker, and an author. And she's currently a franchisee of a supplemental education company. Thank you so much, Gloria, for joining me, and very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great, great. So Gloria, we're gonna talk about, as we discuss various questions that people, particularly women, have when they're going through difficult times like separation or divorce. So why don't we start with the first one, which is what all to consider when making the decision to divorce? And I'll come to the next one, which is this the right decision? And is there a chance, or is there none left at all?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll start a little bit with my story, I think. And so how did I come about this and all of that? So my personal story was I was married for 20 years. And I had reached the point where I had to make that decision for myself. Do I want to stay or do I want to go? And so it was a very, very hard decision. And so what I did is I started reaching out, just like a lot of women do, and doing all these Google searches and all of this to try to find as much information as I could that would help and support me to figure this out for myself. And what I found is there's very little resources on this. And so I began this journey and said for me that it was time for me to go. And so I did make the decision to divorce. But what happened as a result of this is I started creating kind of these thought processes and things to live by to help others as well, because there was so little out there that we could really hold on to. And so what I did is I started writing for a ladies, it's called womensdivorce.com, which I highly recommend, not my site, but one that has a lot of resources out there for ladies. And I kind of became the Dear Abby of the divorce world. And so I took on that and considered it quite an honor. People from around the world were reaching out to me saying, here's a little bit of my story, and what do you think? So one of those main questions always was, should I stay or should I go? Yeah. And the ultimate thing in this is that no one can make that decision except the people in it. And even beyond that, it's no one gets to. So it's not mom and dad, it's not the family, it's not the friends, it's not some big set of rules that are out there. It's really only the people involved who get to make that decision. So there's no real hard, fast rules, but there are some things to think about in making the decision. So first off, I would like to say, if there is abuse of any kind, then get out. Like, that's an easy one. So there's no reason to do that. Oh, I got a hair sticking up here. To think about that or do that, but definitely just get out. That one is, I know it's hard and it's easier said than done, but the answer is get out. Yeah. Beyond that, though, it's kind of a couple guiding questions might be, are you thinking about doing this out of a place of strength or weakness? Am I doing this because I feel strong and that's the next step? Or am I feeling so weak I just can't do this anymore? And so that's one of those kind of things to think about. Another question is, am I running to something or am I running away from something? And kind of sit with that a little bit as well, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You can get through it and have that greener pasture for sure, but it's also a really guiding question. And then the other one is, am I making this decision out of love? Yeah. Because even though it may be something to stay or go in a relationship, you can still use that as a guiding principle for yourself to say, do I need to love myself in such a way that I need to go? Or do I need to love this relationship and stay and put in a little bit more? The ultimate thing, though, is when you do make the decision to never have to look back with regret, but to say, I made the decision with all the information that I had at the time. It was the best decision, and here's why. And then you can move forward.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you put it so well there, given that if you're if you're just dating someone, being be there with someone rather than married, like it's just kind of situation is so much different, right? So it kind of makes it so much less complicated. But like you said, abuse is totally unacceptable, whether it's just you're just dating someone or whether it's marriage. Either way, it's just not acceptable. So the other times, you'd have to ask yourself those questions. So yeah, very, very fair points there. So, there are a lot of resources available. For example, counseling, couple counseling. How do you, is that, have you seen a lot of people try it, and does it work for people? What have you seen?
I always go by that guideline again, that you want to try everything. Right? Especially if you're married.
Yeah.
You just want to exhaust every resource that's available to you, and counseling is there for you. But it's kind of like going to the gym, right? It's only kind of what you put into it that you're going to get out of it. The other side is it really does depend a lot on the counselor themselves. Are they creating more discord than maybe they're bringing harmony? Is one person in there getting blamed for the problems versus right? Because we're still all human. And so even the counselors are human. So I would say in that process, try to find one that you both resonate and is also very non-judgmental in a relationship. So, and has lots of other tools and resources again, and empowers both of you to make the best decisions for you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Coming into the next one, do I need a justifiable reason for divorce? Does there have to be a reason have to be justified? And then we talk about cheating, for example, or just finding ourselves to be, more of roommates. That happens, right? Like after a while, people start thinking, oh, we just together, we're friends, we're very good relationship, but it does feel like, as if you're just roommates. So what do you think about that?
Yes. Well, again, this is why I say nobody gets to make this decision except the people involved in it.
Yeah.
And so, and we look at certain things that are out there to say, whether it's religious reasons, cheating, lying, finances are a hot mess. We're fighting all the time, or we're just good friends, but we just don't have the passion anymore. I love my person, but I'm not in love with my person anymore. And so again, nobody gets to make the decision except for them.
Yeah.
So again, it's looking in the mirror back at ourselves and saying, am I okay with this one way or the other? And I mean, for me, I stayed in my marriage for 20 years. It was very religious based as far as not divorcing. Like that was absolutely the last option until I reached the point for me that it was, there was infidelity in the marriage for me. And I looked at it and said, am I being a good role model for my children? Am I making this okay for my children? And so that was just kind of a defining moment for me in my decision making. But like I said, nobody else gets to do that. That's your story. That's your life. So, yeah. So you can work through it. You can decide, you can, all of that, but you're very empowered to do it. But again, I don't think there's any hard, fast rules that anybody gets to make.
Yeah. And you're right. And, we have seen, we've all seen, certain relationships where it wasn't working out, but then people were able to, get it back on track with
Hmm.
the understanding, giving each other the space and being non-judgmental. Things happen, and just being forgiving. But again, it has to come from both sides, and how that relationship is, and are people actually open to forgive and move on from there, and how badly do they want it to work? And there's so many things, right, that come into play. So
Hmm.
yes, so it really depends on the two people involved, and how strong or kind of non-judgmental their relationship is. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well,
um
and I had a coach. I love this when I was working with my coach.
yeah.
And she said that we all hit a point in our lives where we get to write our own moral code.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I love that,
Mm.
because at that point, I was living by a set of rules that someone else, had kind of laid out for me, that
Yeah.
I really believed in and followed. And then life didn't happen that way.
Mm.
And so at that point, it was, what am I willing to do? What's going to serve me best? How do I love me? How do I
Yeah.
love my kids and my family?
Yeah.
And in my story, I did make a decision. We did get a divorce. He actually, my ex-husband now married the girl that he was with,
Mm.
created a beautiful life,
Mm.
with her.
Mm.
I was able to move on. And so it's not what we always think of as kind of a happily ever after, but in
Yeah.
one sense, it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's hard to see when you're going through it,
Yeah.
but um,
Yeah. No,
we get to do that for ourselves.
absolutely. And I think I believe that, generally, I don't know, I wouldn't say like, how often it would happen, but as women, we do tend to think a lot about, taking on more responsibility somehow for the children as well, just carrying, thinking that, oh no, we have to do this, and we kind of keep attaching it to so many things, but we do forget to think about our own emotional well-being or mental well-being as well. I think there has been obviously the stigma around, like you said, whether it's related to religion, whether it's related to certain societies or communities, women always thinking more about it, like keeping everything together and not having to have a bad impact of any of that on the children. But I think it's so important that we also start thinking about ourselves. Where are we placed? Because if we aren't in a position or situation of well-being, and we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't really pass on that to children or people around us. It will kind of impact
Hmm.
everybody eventually. So yeah, I totally agree about that. So the next one again, for couples who have kids. So what about the kids? What do we tell them? And how do we tell them? Do we stay together for them? So again, like, comes back to the same thing, like how to deal with the situation like that.
Yes, that is. And of all the questions that I was getting,
Yeah.
so many of them just kind of revolved around,
Yeah.
the families and the kids,
Yeah.
and how do we help them?
Mhm.
Because truly they have no say,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's between mom and dad, or,
Yeah.
significant people to one another. They are the ones making this decision, and the kids
Mhm.
just get to kind of live with it.
Mhm.
And we can kind of fall into feeling as if, and feeling guilty that we're hurting our kids in some way,
Yeah.
and that they're now going to be victims of divorce. And so
Mhm.
I do stay away from that a little bit,
Yeah.
and kind of ground myself into the best gift
Mhm.
that I could give to my children was being the best version of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I wasn't happy, healthy, strong in
Mhm.
that relationship, then that was the role model that I
Mhm.
was, giving to my children.
Mhm.
And for me, I can remember because I have four kids going through all of this. And it was my son, my oldest son. And we had dealt with infidelity in our marriage a few times, where I'd forgiven and moved on. And, again, it was very much part of that religious story for me of, you just keep going. And so I'd forgive, I would move on. But then my son, who at the time was 14 years old, came to me and said, Mom, you have forgiven him before. Just do it again. And, put our life back together again. And I thought, it's really not okay with me that my 14-year-old thinks that this is okay.
Yeah.
And that it was just going to be a very quick fix. So, in that, what we decided to do was we sat the kids down, the both of us, my husband at that time, mom, dad, we sat down and we basically just told the kids that there was broken trust between us and that we had decided that we were going to go ahead and divorce. Now, my kids ranged in age from 6, soon to be 7, all the way to 14.
Okay.
So what they could handle and what they needed to know was at different levels, but that was kind of our blanket statement.
Yeah.
So in my writing, when I would answer the questions about the kids and how do we tell them and how do we co-parent and what if there's a Disneyland dad out there that wants to just spoil them rotten, but then I have to be the bad parent.
Yeah.
How do we do this? There's some guidelines that I always encouraged parents to kind of consider based on what they wanted to say or not say.
Yeah.
And so it was always keep the best interests of the child at heart, because divorce and splitting up and creating 2 homes and creating 2 lives, it's very emotional and very hard. And those emotions can take over. And we sometimes can put too much of that heaviness and the burden on the kids. So always try to back up and just ask that question, is this really in the best interest of this particular child? Like I said, on different age range, right? To say this to them or to share this information with them or to tell this story or to call dad this name or, the same thing. Now, the tough part is you only have control over you. You don't have control over the other party or what they're going to say or what they're going to do. And so it's not fair. Just know that. And I just would always just hold myself to these guidelines. So even if, because it was not nice between the 2 of us, he would say something to the kids would run back to me. They would say, well, dad said this. I still would say, is this in the best interest of my child to respond to this?
Yeah.
Or to share with this?
Yeah.
Am I loving my children by sharing this with them?
Yeah.
Or even disputing it?
Yeah.
It was one of those where I can remember one in particular, one of my kids came and said, well, dad said you cheated first.
Okay.
Right. And so I'm looking at my little one who is all of probably, he might have been 10 and saying, this really isn't something a 10-year-old needs to know.
Yeah.
Right. So I just kind of said, well, sweetie, that's just something between, mom and dad. That's not anything that you really need to worry about.
Yeah.
But I love you. Now go play. Right? And it's so easy to get caught up into that emotion and the drama and feeling as if we have to defend ourselves. And, we inadvertently are kind of putting the kids in the middle. Like if I had responded to say, no, honey, and defend myself, what's the point? There's really not a point to it.
Yeah.
And so it's always, what's in the best interest of the kids, right?
Yeah.
And does it support them with where they are in how they're growing up? I always would say, does it help or does it hurt? And if it hurt, then I wasn't saying a word.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very popular thing though at times. Like I had a lot of my family because I was so quiet on so many things that my family would say, but they need to know, like, defend yourself, you're a mom.
Yeah.
And it was just, no, I don't. I just need to provide that healthy, happy home for my kids. That I can do. So, yes. It's not easy, but those are just some guidelines on what you share and what you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is difficult, So the next one is how to get through it. So, a lot of women, I'm sure they get so that even if they've made a decision, they just, it's hurtful, obviously, and so many other things running on your mind. So how to get through it? Like, what do you suggest? What kind of network to women form, or what is it that you suggest to get through it and stay positive and strong still?
Yes. Well, and I often say, when relationships are in trouble, there's no easy out. I mean, especially if kids are involved, there's really no easy out. And so I know for me, I had a lot of people who are saying, even saying the words to me, you're just taking the easy way out. And again, I didn't fall in the defensive. It was like, you just don't understand. You don't get to make this decision for me. I do. And you're allowed to have your opinions, but I get to make those decisions. And so, but what happens, and this just kind of happens across the board, is that when you do make a decision to leave a relationship, whether a marriage or a significant, whatever it is, and you make the decision to leave, you literally do go through a grief process. So just know that that's very, very normal. I would often say it's like going through a fog, because everything that you knew and can count on is now different. Everything is changing all at once. The home that you had is changing. The schedule changes. Your person that you thought you could count on is now fighting with you and making you out to be the Wicked Witch of the West, right? Like it's everything around you is changing, and emotions are so high because it's part of that process. Where you may even start off saying, we can be friends and let's figure this out together. You start fighting over the stuff, who's going to get what. So just know it is very emotional, that it is. And so, but I was talking to a friend about this just the other day, and we were talking about, she wanted to go to the very logical side of things. Well, if it's going to be the grief cycle and it's all these things, then it makes it better. And I said, well, there is logic and there is emotions. And so, yes, we can understand that we're going through the grief cycle, but the emotions are going to still kind of take over. As much as we want to say, no, I'm just going to be very logical about this. It's like, just beware that it's probably not going to be as easy as you think. And that, but I say too, it's just know and love yourself in those emotions. Don't try to think I'm better than this, or this is a negative emotion. I'm angry. I shouldn't feel this way. It's sitting with, I am really, really angry about this. And what am I angry about? And is there something I need to do with this anger to let it pass through me? And you're not holding on to it and sitting, because if you sit with the anger too long, it just turns into bitterness and resentment and all kinds of things. So it's like, yes, I'm angry. I accept that I'm angry. I love myself being angry. It won't last forever, and you just kind of let it pass through. It's like you are going to go through those different things. You are grieving not only the loss of that significant person, but you're grieving the loss of the life that you created together. And now, while it's an opportunity to create a new life, you still have to let the old one go. Yes. And so, and this is where, again, that self-love, that sometimes where you thought that partner was going to provide it for you, you now have the opportunity to figure out what it looks like for yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say too, it's like that self-talk during all of this is huge. For me personally, that was the biggest gift, was that I had to actually learn how to love myself when I didn't have that significant person doing it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there was that big hole of, you know, I feel so unlovable. And now it's, oh, well, what does it look like that I can do it for myself?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's physical things like, you know, massages and bubble baths and, you know, buying some new clothes or getting a new haircut, you know, things like this that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's also the thoughts that go through our head. You know, why did I put up with this so long? I'm so stupid that I did this. Why was I so naive that I didn't see him cheating on me again? You know, like different thoughts like that, that we can be so kind and so loving instead of tearing ourselves down even more.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's very important point that you make, that, you know, we have to accept our emotions, whatever they are, whatever we're going through, and, you know, cut out of ourselves some slack that, you know, we're human beings. It's okay to feel those emotions, but not, you know, trying to hang on to them, or, you know, negative talk, but the self-talk that's very more positive, and, you know, which is kind of self-loving and saying that it's okay, and, you know, you can move on, and not blaming yourself all the time. So thank you for that. And the other question, the last one we have on here, is about the biggest mistake women make going through a divorce.
Yes. Well, and it's because emotions are riding so high. It's easy to step into, you know, some of these mistakes that you just don't think about, because you're just, like I said, you're kind of walking around in a fog, where there are some days it's so dark you can barely see your hand in front of your face, let alone make some major decisions that are going to affect the rest of your life. And so it's a little bit of understanding again about what's going on in this. So I did pick some mistakes, and the very first one is that fact of making decisions out of emotion instead of logic. I'm going to do this because I hate your guts right now and I want to hurt you, versus, is this really in all of our best interest, my kid's best interest? Is this going to help and support me to move forward? You know, and make those decisions. Men, especially for the women, when it gets to that point, men tend to go to, it's more of a business transaction. Right. And that's why it's a little bit easier for them to just cut to the chase, make these decisions, say, you know, these hard things. And you're like, how could he go there? Doesn't he care about me at all? Like, you know, and there was a point we were madly in love, and now he wants me to sell the house that we had our kids in. Like, how is he getting there so fast? And me, I look at, you know, our family photos hanging on the wall that was taken in our backyard, you know. So men tend to get there a little bit faster, but it's truly, you know, just again, understanding yourself a little bit and try to come from the place a little bit outside of emotion when making those big decisions. The other thing, and I this is having lived it too, it's hard to understand that laws aren't always fair. And there is a difference between justice and laws. And so we think that, you know, logically, if we do this, then this should be the end result. And it doesn't always work out that way. And it's a hard one. It's just not fair. So you have to kind of pick your battles sometimes and continue to move forward in the midst of, no matter where you are in the world, those, you know, there is a difference between, you know, the hammer should come down on him because he did this versus what do the laws actually say. And so kind of educating yourself on the laws can definitely help you as well.
Yeah.
And then the third one, definitely is money. And so a lot of women will leave that responsibility, making the money decisions, to the guy, especially if they're the primary breadwinner, or one in the relationship may be. But you're really, really hurting yourself if you don't understand the financial situation that you find yourself in. Because now you have, maybe it was a two income household. Now you have one. And what are the laws in wherever you live? I mean, and in the United States, the laws are different state to state.
Yeah.
So for me, I happened to fall into a state where there was no alimony at all. And so I went from being my primary responsibility of raising 4 kids with a little bit of extra money to now I have to figure out a way to pay for everything on my own. And we decided to share custody of the kids. So there was actually no child support either. So, but it's just a matter of educating yourself. It's something to kind of think through. It is something to consider. And just be very honest with yourself about what that financial picture looks like.
Yeah.
So instead of it, again, being an emotional decision to say, I'm sick and tired of this, I'm kicking you out, I'm putting all your clothes onto the front lawn, get out of here. And then there's no financial plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And so again, it sounds very logical, it sounds very businesslike, but a marriage, especially, is a legal contract, and splitting it up is really just a kind of a business deal at the end of the day. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important, right? About finances, getting your finances in order. Yeah, like you said, it does sound very robotic. Like, okay, this has happened. This is my finances, this and that. But it does. You have those are the times when you have to think about it logically and not just throw in, everything away because emotionally you're just not in a good place. So yeah, definitely really important. So thank you so much, Gloria. This has been really, really amazing. The way you put things, the way you've broken things down to understand. It's been like really amazing to get your viewpoint, and it's I think it will be really helpful for a lot of people. So thank you so much. And if I get any follow-up questions, we can get in touch again, or maybe another time we can do another chat. But it's been so helpful, useful, and informative. So thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Anytime. Thank you. And I wish everyone that is listening the best in the world. Yes, I do.